So we're doing something different this week. We didn't have we weren't able to record last week's sermon, and I had a couple people ask me about it. So I'm going to try this. I don't know how it will go. I'm recording it to my phone in my office, which also doubles as the furnace room in my basement. And we're going to see how it goes. I usually like to speak to people so I can see reactions and things like that, but we're going to do what we can here. And so I'm just going to record what I wrote. Quite a bit. I went off script, so it won't be exactly what I did last Sunday, but last Sunday was August 11th, but it should be pretty close. So we'll give it a shot. Here it goes. I record these things for anybody that isn't able to go to church, and my mom. So here we go. Last Sunday after church, I was talking to Ron, and he brought up how he was surprised that we didn't say anything about it in church. And he wasn't being critical. He was just saying that now these things have become so common that we really aren't outraged anymore. And we got to talking about love and apathy. And Ron mentioned that he thinks apathy is the opposite of love. And the problem with all of this is that I really didn't know what he was talking about. Now, that isn't that unusual because I often don't know what Ron is talking about because he's so much smarter than me and he uses those really big words. But I didn't really think anything about it because so much garbage happens in our society these days that we are becoming immune or calloused to bad news or shocking news. And on the way home, I had the radio on, and then I heard about the shootings. The shooting in El Paso and the shooting in Dayton. And it clicked in my brain, and I realized finally what he was talking about. The funny thing is, Ron didn't even know that I didn't know about the shootings. Our conversation about love and apathy and becoming immune to shocking news made sense, even if I didn't know that he was specifically talking about the shootings. And I got to be honest with you, I'm sick of it. I'm tired. I'm weary, disgusted, all of it. I'm disappointed. I'm embarrassed. And I keep most of my sermons on my computer, and I look through them from time to time because sometimes as I'm writing a sermon, something sounds familiar. And I go back and I look because I don't want to just say the same stuff over and over and over again. And about a year ago, I did a sermon on mass shootings because there was that big one in a church. And it was about a year ago, and here we are again. And there have been tons in between. When will we learn? And as I was looking through my old sermons, I realized that I do say the same stuff over and over again. I've done sermon after sermon on love and treating others the way you want to be treated. And I think that's okay. Jesus said the same stuff over and over again. And it wasn't because he couldn't think of anything else to say. It was because we don't learn. Honestly, it's embarrassing. The first day of school for my students was Monday. So I've had kids for a full week. And the other teachers here will tell you that there really isn't a lot of heavy academic stuff happening that first week. It's all getting to know each other, learning routines, learning procedures, and organizing that crazy amount of school supplies. But I also spend tons and tons of time talking about how we treat each other, and bullying, and kindness, and empathy. And I'm sure that Sandy and Laura do the same. Like, I seriously talk about that stuff a lot. And on the second day of school, after constant talk about kindness and respect and empathy, I had a kid get suspended on the second day, and I couldn't believe it, especially after all that work on how we treat each other. He got in such a brawl at recess and talked so bad to a teacher that he got suspended on the second day of school. And I thought that was ridiculous. How could a kid act this way? And then it dawned on me, how could he not? How could he not act this way? Look at us. Look at us as adults. Look at how adults treat each other. Look at how adults act when they have differences. Look at the garbage that is spewed from adults' mouths. Look at the violence. Look at the hate. I'm sure Jesus is looking down on us right now and feeling like I did after I heard about that kid's suspension. And he's probably thinking, what else can I say? How do they not understand my message? Honestly, it's embarrassing. Now, when I took this job, one of the things I wanted to do was to have loving and hopeful and uplifting sermons. I don't want you to leave church, a church service from Big Walnut, feeling down or defeated or judged. And one strategy that I have used to accomplish that goal was to stay away from politics. And for the most part, I think I have. I've simply tried to talk about the gospel. And if you've detected a political slant in any of my sermons, it's mostly up to your own interpretation, because I've focused on the teachings of Jesus. But to be honest, it's hard. It's hard not to be overtly political in practically anything you do or say. And it's because politics in our world today permeates and seeps into everything. I always thought that I could keep church and politics separate, but it's impossible. Jesus was political. I always thought that I could keep all political controversies out of church, but that's just impossible too. Jesus was controversial. And honestly, the church should be a safe place to discuss our differences. The church should be a safe place free from judgment, free from hate, free from name-calling. And if we can't have civil discussions within our own church, then what chance does society have? Now, at church, in the pews, I could see that some of you are looking uncomfortable, squirming in your seats because you don't know what I'm going to say next. And honestly, I don't know what I'm going to say next. So I understand that. I truly don't know what to say. But I do know what Jesus said. I do know the messages that Jesus has taught us over and over and over again. I do know the parables. I do know the stories that he told to guide us in our lives. And I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that after 2,000 years, this is as far as we've come. I'm embarrassed that the stuff that I hear on the news every night from full-grown adults is behavior that I do not tolerate from my fourth grade students. Embarrassed that putting people that disagree with us down and name-calling has become so common that it's not really even news anymore. I'm sad. I'm sad that there's so much hurt in this world. I'm sad that some people feel so helpless and hopeless that they think that violence and hatred is the only thing that they have left. I'm sad that children and families suffering and facing separation have become such a hot button political issue that we spend more time trying to prove that it's happening or defending the actions than actually helping the human beings. I'm sad that friendships have ended, churches have collapsed, and communities have been torn apart because we just can't seem to tolerate different points of view. I'm outraged. Outraged because I am sick and tired of hearing about politics. Outraged that my sons come home from school every day talking about arguments kids at school have about politics and politicians. I'm outraged that we have basic problems in this country that are obvious and solvable, but the politicians just won't see reason or common sense or basic human decency because that might mean agreeing with someone on the other side of the aisle. And I'm outraged that I live in the richest, most prosperous country in the history of humanity, and we just can't seem to get our stuff together long enough to help the sick and the poor and the weary and the needy. I'm outraged that problems that I thought we had worked on, problems that I thought we had made improvements on, have once again entered into our everyday lives. Are we truly still talking about white supremacy and blaming women for their own sexual harassment in 2019? But most of all, I'm scared. I am so scared about what the world will be like when my kids get older. What kind of world are they going to face? You know, when I was a kid, it wasn't like this. And I'm sure part of it is that we always looked at the past with rose-colored glasses. But I truly don't remember this much division. I don't remember this much constant bickering between people, between politicians. I don't remember this complete disregard for humanity. I don't remember this overt racism and sexism. I don't remember so much hate because of differences. Now, maybe it was just hidden. I don't know. I certainly don't remember the leaders in our country saying and doing the things that they are saying and doing. And it scares me. It scares me how far we have sunk in the last few years. And I am petrified that if this trend continues, what type of world will my kids and my grandkids live in? I'm scared for our future. As humans, as a country, as Christians. So that's what I'm feeling. And I don't care about the politics. I care about what kind of people we are. I see a lot of politicians out there not acting like leaders or role models at all. I see a lot of Christians out there not acting very Christian-like. I see a lot of people out there not acting like humans. Am I judging? Yep, Should I be judging? Nope. I'm not perfect. Far from it. But something has got to change. Why is this happening? What can we do? A lot of suggestions and solutions are just so short-sighted, so predictable, and not thought out. And I know this might ruffle some feathers, but I've also heard all of this stuff about how this is all because they have taken God out of the schools. It's just not true. God is all-knowing. God is all-powerful. And He's everywhere. And when tragic things happen, God is there, wrapping His arms around the people. In fact, there's way more God stuff in our school now than ever before. Now, all schools are different, and you might have had a different experience, but when I was a kid, we certainly didn't have prayer in school. We didn't have Bibles or anything religious at all. And now all schools in Indiana are mandated to have a moment of silence after the Pledge of Allegiance. And we have things like prayers at the pole, and even my school, we bus kids out one day a week during the school day to attend a weekly religious education at a church of their choice. Now, I'm not saying that those things are necessarily bad, but I'm not buying the excuse that all of these bad things are happening because God has been removed from the schools. That's just an easy thing to say, to rally a base and cause division. And plus, God is bigger than that. If you live like you are supposed to live, if you treat others the way you are supposed to treat others, if you spread love and not hate, then God is in the schools. God does not need politicians writing laws to keep Him relevant. God lives in you, and that's the whole point. I seem to remember how Jesus reacted to politicians and authorities and their rules about God. Jesus was more interested in what was in your heart. So anyway, those are not solutions. And my solution might seem simplistic, might seem too easy, might seem ridiculous, might even seem a little too pie in the sky. But honestly, I can't think of anything else. So here it is. We need to have more empathy, individually and collectively. Now, I know it sounds too simple, but I think it's actually the hardest thing in the world. Darn near impossible. But that doesn't mean it's a bad idea. I feel like we've lost our way as an empathetic nation. Even though empathy is a very trendy word. At my school, we have an acronym that we use every day, PRIDE. We talk about it all the time. We hear about it on announcements. We have assemblies about it, and kids get prizes all the time, and every kid in the school knows that the E in PRIDE stands for empathy. But when I asked them what empathy meant, none of them had a clue. So there is a danger. As Christians, we talk about love and kindness and empathy so much that sometimes those words lose their intensity. But we can't let that happen. We need to love intensely. We need to show kindness with intensity. And we need to be empathetic. Think about what is on the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Now those are words that would make Jesus proud. But does that sound like the United States in 2019? Do we truly feel empathy for the tired? Do we have empathy for the poor? And what about those huddled masses? How do we treat those huddled masses? Do we have empathy for them? We have to get out of this argumentative, divisive, blaming, name-calling, hate-filled cycle that we are currently in. And empathy is certainly one way out. Now, I know I've told this story before, but I'm going to use it again here. When I was in 5th grade, we had a folk storyteller come to our school. And he's actually the reason that I learned to play guitar. And he wrote this story about empathy. And I think it's about perfect. It's so simple, but it has so many levels. And it's a strong and bold statement about empathy. And I'm going to attach the video of him telling the story. It's called The Two Warriors. And it's perfect. So I encourage you to play it after this sermon. Because it's perfect, and empathy can change the world. I read another story about empathy, about a little girl who was coming home late for supper. And her mother did the usual thing. She demanded to know where she had been. And the little girl replied that she had stopped to help Janie, a friend of hers whose bicycle was broken in a fall. And the mom said, "But you don't know anything about fixing bicycles." And the little girl said, "I know that. I just stopped to help her cry." And this is what the Bible has to say about empathy. And I'm not just cherry-picking verses here to make my point. There are about 1 million verses in the Bible with the same theme. This is from Romans chapter 12, verse 15. It says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep." And there's another one from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. It says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you." In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, it says, "Finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind." And finally, my favorite, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, "Do not let any corrupt talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." So maybe I ruffled some feathers today, and that's okay. Because the church should be an open and respectful place where different opinions are heard. I'm just a man, and I'm giving you my interpretation of God's Word. But I hope that I was able to present my thoughts in a respectful manner, in a way that seeks to bring us together rather than rip us apart. I seek to speak with love and compassion. And I pray to God every day to help me be more empathetic. Because I truly believe there is still hope. There is a future out there for my children and my grandchildren that is filled with love and peace and kindness. And we can get there through empathy. Amen.